This video is sponsored by Squarespace. Since Lewis Hamilton's move to Ferrari was announced in early February, there's been a distinct lack of any additional movement on the driver market. Well, that won't last for long. Somebody has to blink first, and just like when Sebastian Vettel announced his retirement from Formula 1, the chain reaction we'll get once the first card falls will be big. 13 drivers remain out of contract for 2025. So who's going to confirm their position next? My name's Tommo. Let's talk about it. Now, of course, there are two teams with their driver pairings set in stone for 2025 and beyond. McLaren, Lando, Oscar, looking very well positioned, a super young driver lineup, but already a driver lineup when you combine the two. Good amount of experience. Piastri's getting closer to Norris. Their car's not quite there to fight at the very front, but they do have upgrades planned for around Imola, Miami. I think if Zach Brown, Andreas Stella, and technical team at McLaren, obviously Rob Marshall's joined, David Sanchez as well from Ferrari. If they can give these two a car to compete at the front, I think they're in a very good position to challenge. And then of course there is Ferrari. Now of course, Sainz has just come off the back of a win. There's been a lot of talk, do they regret letting him go for Hamilton? Ultimately, Ferrari knew what Carlos Sainz was about. He'd proven it numerous times, whether that was in Silverstone in 22 when he took the win, whether it was Singapore last year where he took the win, whether it was this year. He's a measured, intelligent, one of the most intelligent, racing IQ wise anyway, drivers on the grid. He was not dropped for performance reasons because, looking at that driver pairing, I've said this many a time, I felt like Charles and Carlos was the most balanced driver pairing on the grid. They've let that go for Lewis Hamilton. It's no shade against Carlos really, because Lewis is Lewis. He comes with a huge commercial interest and intrigue. Him at Ferrari was always this dream move that we just never thought would happen. And look, the potential for peak Lewis Hamilton is clearly quicker than peak Carlos Sainz. So to give him a chance at this Ferrari, I can see why Ferrari have done it. And I tell you what, I bet Lewis is pretty chuffed at the minute, right? Things might not be going so well at Mercedes, but at the end of the day, Ferrari, in my opinion, are the only team with a chance of mounting a title fight against Max and his Red Bull before the regulation shift in 2026. Maybe McLaren, Mercedes absolutely not, Aston's certainly not. Maybe. There's a chance in 25 Lewis could fight for a world title in a Ferrari. And just as Max and Red Bull are the dominant force in Formula 1 right now, when it comes to building your very own beautiful online home, a drag and drop template built beauty of a website, today's video sponsor Squarespace is the dominant force in the market as far as I'm concerned. I've been using Squarespace predating this F1 YouTube channel entirely, so it's an absolute pleasure to work with them and promote their wonderful product to you wonderful people. 24/7 customer support, no coding knowledge needed. Give it a go. It's free of charge to try. It's only when you want to publish your finished website to the world that you have to pay anything, and when that time inevitably comes around, I just banged my elbow. Head to squarespace.com/TommoF1 to get 10% off of your very first website or domain. So that leaves 8 teams. So let's go through them in alphabetical order. And at the end, I'll give the driver move that I think is going to be the next one to happen. So you're up, Alpine. This is a team with no game right now, which is mad considering they're a constructor. They've got no pull right now for an established name. There's no established name. A Carlos Sainz isn't even going to entertain Alpine, even though the potential is there. Potential's a dangerous word to use, especially around Renault. In fact, Alpine should be more concerned about losing one of their 2 French drivers. I think Gasly, Ocon, they're 2 incredibly talented lads, right? And they're very close on pace. I've said this before, I think they will fight tooth and nail to keep Gasly more than Ocon because he has more of the overall package. He's way more commercially attractive. Off track, he's got a much bigger fan base. Ocon is one of the most disliked drivers, which I think's shame. Check out my video about Esteban Ocon. You might give him a bit more benefit of doubt when you know about his story. But of course, if one of them is to leave, then that seat will have certainly get many people going for it, but just no established talent that we know has experience in F1. Young drivers, someone outside of F1 who wants to get into F1 certainly would. I can certainly see Esteban not being in an Alpine in 2025. Where he goes, in my predictions I said Williams pre-season. maybe that's a bit of a long shot, but I could certainly see him going elsewhere. Alpine needs stability, and Jack Doohan has been in a lot of their marketing stuff recently. They've given him a lot of testing mileage. I think he would be their best bet, really. He's a young driver with plenty of potential. He's got a high ceiling. You know, his junior career, very, very impressive, Jack Doohan. I think he would be their best choice, him alongside Gasly. And in that case, I don't think there's any rush at all to announce that. I think they'd rather keep Ocon, Gasly together. But if they do lose Ocon, then they'll probably announce Gasly and Doohan later on in the year. So I can't see Alpine announcing their driver lineup anytime soon, unless it sticks, of course. Aston Martin, Fernando Alonso. Now, of course, he's made many a statement around, you know, sure whether he'll carry on. It's a lot of travelling in Formula One. He's been doing it for a long time, blah, blah, blah. In my opinion, he's waffling. I don't think this is true. I think he knows he holds the cards, ultimately. He knows Aston Martin want to keep him. He knows that he's in a good car, but not a great car. It's tight at the top, right? They can battle with a Mercedes at the minute, but they've not quite got the pace to fight with Ferraris and McLarens, and certainly not Red Bulls. He's keeping his options open, as he should. In his stage of his career, you know, he's into his 40s now. He can't be making any knee-jerk decisions. And say about McLaren's upgrades earlier, Aston Martin, their upgrade planned around kind of Imola time. And I don't think we'll see any move from Fernando until he gets that upgraded Aston Martin underneath him. Maybe they take a massive step forward, like McLaren did last year with their big upgrade. Maybe it doesn't even upgrade the car like we saw last year with Aston Martin, bringing upgrades and not really, it wasn't upping the grade, it was midding the grade. Because then also you look at Fernando's options elsewhere. I mean, Red Bull would be chaos, and I'd love to see it. Him and Max would actually, I think that would work better than many would think, actually. But two huge egos. You know Fernando's going for the title. That's the only way he's accepting that move, if he feels like he's going to get a fair fight, which I think he would. He wouldn't beat Max. I don't believe he'd beat Max. However, Mercedes, obviously, if you know they're thinking about Kimi Antonelli, he could be like, look, take me on for a couple of seasons. I'll do 2 more years in F1. You give me a shot in 26 with the new regulations. You're not going to do anything in 25 because Mercedes have absolutely dropped the bag. Audi would take too long as well. Yeah, I don't see this move and his announcement coming just yet. I think maybe like this is a mid-season, you know, summer break kind of move where we know where Fernando's gonna be next. Do I believe that Mercedes for 2026 is a more appealing prospect on paper than Aston Martin with a Honda power unit in the back? Apparently they've made a big offer to Adrian Newey as well. Bring the Honda Newey relationship together again. Lawrence Stroll, you know, he's determined to succeed. Maybe it's worth staying put, Fernando. And of course, if he does move, then Yuki, obviously with his Honda connection, driving in a really impressive manner at the minute. And you know Liam Lawson's coming in as well if they wanted to get another year out of Ricciardo. And as for the other seat, look, I would like to see Lance bounce over to the 2025 WEC project. So I think that will happen one day. The longer time goes on, the less likely Lance is actually going to move. It's in Aston's best interest, if Lance isn't going to stay at that team, to announce that as soon as possible, because then they can, you know, maybe get Sainz in. I mean, imagine Sainz Alonso at Aston Martin. Jesus Christ, that'd be incredible. Even Alonso Tsunoda, I'd be down for that. If Stroll wasn't to carry on in 25, I think we'd know that by now. So I think he'll stay put. As for Haas, well, it feels like Ollie Behrman is pretty set on one of those seats, especially after his Ferrari performance in Saudi Arabia. Of course, he's only got 2 points on the board in Formula 2. Prema didn't turn up round 1. He obviously didn't compete in round 2 at all and didn't have a particularly strong Australian Grand Prix weekend either. I think we'll see at least one of either Kevin or Nico announced elsewhere before we see Ollie announced in that car. Because also we know that Saba, Audi, right, are interested in Hülkenberg. Does it make sense for, you know, Haas to just be like, you know, we know we're going to lose you eventually, Nico, so let's just get Behrman in replacement for you. Have Magnussen, who's not been as good as Hülkenberg. He's been closer this year, but he's not been as good as Hülkenberg. But he does know that team very well. Very, very well. He's well embedded into that team. So have him alongside Behrman. We know Haas have been bitten by having 2 rookies before. You know, I think having Behrman and a driver, you know, in my pre-season predictions, driver predictions, I predicted Palou to come in, which I'd love. but it's a bit chaos because, you know, he's got no F1 experience apart from a bit of FP1 mileage with McLaren. So I don't think this one comes anytime soon in terms of the Haas announcement. I think we hear about Nico Hülkenberg before Haas do anything. So Haas will be a way down the line, I think. So then to Mercedes, the highest profile seat available, Alonso, Sainz, Antonelli. They feel like the three main competitors for that one. Ocon, Albon doesn't feel like that's going to happen. I think, look, for long-term longevity and performance, known performance, Russell, Sainz would be unreal. That would be a sick lineup. But would Carlos be dissuaded by Toto's clear ambition to get Kimi Antonelli into that Mercedes car at some point? And would he be concerned that, am I just a stopgap and then they're going to chuck me out and boom? Because we know Russell and Toto have a very, very good relationship as well. You know, at this stage of his career, he's 29 now. He wants his own title fight, and could Mercedes give that to him? Right now, no. They certainly wouldn't in 2025. Sainz going there would be a gamble on 2026 onwards. Again, that's where maybe Fernando finds that seat a bit more appealing than Carlos. And I mean, Kimi Antonelli, like, he's, you know, gone into F2. It's a big jump up for him, and he's done well considering his age, considering he didn't even do Formula 3. He's done a good job so far, and we'll see how that season goes. And Mercedes are giving him loads of mileage in 2022 machinery, because of course you can do that now. What's the rush with Antonelli? I mean, Piastri did a year on the sidelines after he won F2 and has come into F1 and been unreal. The rush, I guess, is that could they end up losing him? I mean, Toto kind of cited this, right? He doesn't want to lose Antonelli like he lost Verstappen. I don't see that move happening in 25. I think it's Sainz or Alonso. But when do they announce that? That's the question. Racing balls. Look, the only way that these lot are the next driver announcement is if Ricciardo stinks. It would take a big stink from Ricciardo as well, because commercially, again, he's very, very appealing to V carbohydrate. He's like 2/10 off Yuki in qualifying, between 1/10 and 2/10 in race pace, closer to 1/10. Not good enough for a driver of Ricciardo's experience relative to Tsunoda, who's still very raw, but Tsunoda is improving, and I think, you know, underestimate him at your own fate. I really hope Yuki falls on his feet here, because I think he deserves a decent seat. I think he deserves, you know, an opportunity to go to like an Aston Martin, because I think he's proven that he is a very, very talented driver, but so is Liam Lawson. When Liam Lawson came in alongside Yuki beat him, but not by much, and that was incredibly impressive. Done F2, done Super Formula, he's about as prepared as he possibly could be. Liam said himself, you know, if he can't get an opportunity at Red Bull, he will look elsewhere, which I think is a bit of a wink, wink, nudge, nudge to Red Bull, being like, come on, if you don't give me an opportunity, I will entertain something else. And absolutely he should. This is exactly what Lawson should be doing, because he should absolutely be in F1. I just don't see Red Bull rushing the Racing Bulls decision. I don't think Daniel's seat is in any kind of risk right now, even though media reports have suggested maybe it is. New Zealand Herald, I know your game, right? Trying to get the Kiwi in the car. Fair play. I don't hate it, right? But I don't think that's happening anytime soon. A lot of it comes down to Red Bull, right? And where Max ends up. Because, yeah, look, I think the question is still there. Toto has been heavily flirting with Max Verstappen. He'd be our number one choice, blah, blah, blah. He wants him in the car. He's still obviously somewhat hurt that he lost the opportunity to sign Max way back in the day when Red Bull snatched him up, and obviously, you know, missed a massive opportunity back then. You've seen the driver that Max has become. What I will say is that I think Max has the star power to stick around this season, win the title, stick around next season, win the title, which he probably will, and then make the move for 2026 and go elsewhere. You know, he would be leaving the potential for a 2025 World Championship on the table. If he was to move to Mercedes, he would 100% be leaving that on the table. Aston Martin, yeah, as well. I think Ferrari would be best placed to beat Sergio Perez in a Red Bull. And talking to Checo, I think Checo's position is, he was 22 seconds behind in the first race, which is objectively a big gap, but he was still second, so a lot of people were very kind about that result. I think too kind, in my opinion. Much better second race, Saudi, only like 8 to 10 seconds off. That's where he should be. And then obviously Australia, he just wasn't there to capitalise. He did have floor damage, so it's hard to know to what extent that was just a lack of pace or just a small bit of damage that the team are kind of using to protect their driver, which I think they should. I think that should be the job of the team principal. Have your internal discussions and all that, but publicly anyway, protect your drivers. This Max Red Bull stuff is obviously the big fly in the ointment, isn't it? So this could be announced tomorrow. It could be announced in 8 months from now. I just don't know. And obviously Red Bull are in the privileged position, which of course they've got to that privileged position through their own merit, of being the best car. So they know if a seat opens up at Red Bull and Max is to leave, every single driver is going to be exercising any potential break clause in their contract to try and get in that car. Because to be in a Red Bull alongside Checo is a way different opportunity to a Red Bull alongside Max Verstappen. If it was a Red Bull alongside Checo, Lando Norris would have taken that move a long time ago. Saba is obviously a huge one. They need to make a big, compelling pitch to Carlos Sainz to get him to take that 1 year of pain in 2025. Because Saba right now are looking like an absolute clown show. Pit stops, it's unacceptably bad. The pace of the car, about there in that kind of midfield, right? Then not right off the back, but they just keep having 45-second pit stops. Again, I think Hülkenberg is a pretty sure thing for that seat. So could I maybe see that being announced quite imminently? Ex-Sauber driver as well. Obviously Hülkenberg back in the day, but working on that Audi project. Things are not looking great for Bottas and Joe, even though I feel like I made quite a compelling argument as to why I think Joe is the perfect driver for Audi. Certainly commercially, great second driver. But Hülkenberg, Sainz, if they can get that done, Audi have to get that done, because that would be top tier. Whoever is moving there is moving for the potential of 2026 and beyond, but potential is a dangerous word because someone has to finish last in 2026. This new regulation system, someone is going to finish last. And just because you're a constructor, as we're seeing from Alpine and Renault right now, does not guarantee you anything. Look, they take motorsport very seriously. You know, you look at their success in Dakar with Carlos Sainz Sr., you look at their old success at Le Mans with the TDI project, but do they know how to F1? Because that's a very, very different prospect entirely. Because then finally, Williams, obviously Alex is their crown jewel, right? And they're desperate to keep hold of him. And James Vowles want to build the team around him. It really does depend on what opportunities open up elsewhere. You know, the Rilton's investment looks good. Vowles and Fry have done the dirty work to, you know, fix up that team from a facility and from an operational point of view. And Alex should be somewhat emboldened by that, because if he has ambitions to take that team with him going forward, they need to make these changes to hit the ground running in 2026. And Vowles has gone on record and said, you know, he doesn't really care about 24, 25 in terms of results. Get as much money as you can, get as much facility change done as you can, and then 2026 is the opportunity. Can they do enough to show Alex that that's the place to be? Or does Alex see an opportunity at an Aston Martin, maybe a Sauber Audi, maybe a Mercedes, maybe even Red Bull? Like, that's been tempted a lot, which I don't know. Is he the right driver to go in to replace Max? Well, I don't know about that. I'm not so sure. To go alongside Max as a good second driver, yeah, I think that's a pretty compelling argument, especially obviously him being a tyre driver and the 51% tyre ownership at Red Bull. So who's next then? Well, there's two options. It's either Hülkenberg to Sauber Audi. I think that's pretty much guaranteed. Seidel, again, has already actively said that we want him. And that is clearly a more enticing prospect long term, even though Haas are clear of Sauber at the minute. That's a more enticing prospect from 2026 onwards. German driver, German team, you'll probably get a better wage as well with Nico. It was Haas who chose to take up the option of Nico for this year on his contract. So that's a pretty clear one. The other one is Carlos Sainz to Mercedes. Sainz to Red Bull is a no-go too, in my opinion. Maybe to replace Max, but not alongside him. Their dads clashed way too much back in the Toro Rosso days. Does it come before or after Hülkenberg to Audi? The problem with Sauber Audi announcing Hulk now is then that, you know, Bottas and Joe know one of them's going, and that potentially destabilises them somewhat for this season. Whereas with Sainz to Mercedes, we already know Hamilton's leaving. There's no one being destabilised there. If anything, it just kind of shuts that down and moves things on. Obviously, Fernando's going to be interested in that Mercedes seat, but I'm not even sure, because Honda's essentially going to be a works entry with Aston Martin in 2026. And a big part of me feels like I would trust Aston Martin and especially Honda with the engine as well, because we've got the best engine on the grid right now, I would trust them more than I would Mercedes. So yeah, I think Alonso stay put. I think Sainz to Mercedes will be the next driver transfer to be announced. Date TBC. I think Carlos will back himself to beat George as well. George is quick, don't get me wrong, but he's done quite a bit in recent times to maybe show Toto Wolff that he can't necessarily be trusted with leading this team long term. Just please stop crashing, mate. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. Who's coming next? Do you think Sainz will go to Mercedes, or do you see a more compelling prospect elsewhere? Drop a like if you enjoyed this video, subscribe if you're new and you want to see more stuff just like this. My name's Tomo. Thanks again. Have a good one. Ta-da.